titles of everybody's presentation and stuff like that, you know, you can tell from the titles that a lot of those have their roots in change and how teachers perceive change and the introduction of innovations and things like that. And even though the concerns-based adoption model has been around for a long time, I think it still has a valid place in educational circles because, you know, a lot of the new ideas that are coming out are kind of related, can be related back to that or can find its roots back to that. Like, especially like I found references to Fullen, you know, from the early 80s. And, you know, I learned about Fullen in this program and I thought, well, gee, I thought he was just a recent thing, but he's been around for a long time, I guess. So during this presentation, I'm going to give an overview of the concerns-based adoption model first, just to refresh everybody's memory. I'm going to give an overview of my project, the rationale, the process. I'm going to talk about 5 essential questions that I kind of came up with. I'm going to talk about the website development, the website that I developed as a result of this, as a place to store all these materials and as a place to kind of go back and refer to later on in my career if I ever get a place where I'm an IT leader, either at the district level or the school level. I can come back to this website and refer to it and so on and so forth. So if any of you want to go onto that website right now and have a look at it, don't do the activity yet because I was kind of saving that for the discussion part. And then I'm going to conclude and then we're going to discuss some of these ideas. So some of you might remember that course that we took a year ago on managing the organization, and we were presented with one of our group projects was to talk about this paper from 2010 by Jeannie Hall called Technology's Achilles Heel, Achieving High Quality Implementation. And that article had a big bearing on me as a leader, and it kind of sparked my thinking about a lot of different things and how teachers view change. And you know, I had teachers at the school that I'm at now who kind of apathetic about technology or didn't really like it. And you know, so the concerns-based adoption model gave me sort of a framework to empathize with those people, and it taught me some patience, you know, patience with myself and patience with other people, and gave me the courage to try different things. As an example of that, I teach phys ed a lot this year, and so I had never really taught the dance units very much. I just kind of like did a little one-period thing. But this year I had these videos come to me, this multicultural dance thing, and so I brought that into the gym, and I thought, oh, let's just do it, you know, and see what happens. And you know, it worked well, and I was happy with that result. So the concerns-based adoption model did that for me. So as you remember, the concerns-based adoption model is made up of 3 diagnostic dimensions. The first one that I'm going to talk about is levels of use. So this examines how teachers use an innovation. So they go from non-use all the way up to the 7th level, which is called renewal. So at that level, the user is seeking more effective alternatives. He's looking for a way to take that innovation and use it in a more effective way than the creator had envisioned. The second one is the stages of concern. The stages of concern deals with the affective domain. So how do teachers feel when you introduce an innovation? So as IT leaders, we're going to be called upon to introduce innovations. And so having a good understanding of what some teachers might be feeling is helpful, because then you can plan PD to alleviate those concerns and move them up the list. So the goal is to eventually be having teachers who are concerned with, well, how can I use this with another teacher, or how can I design a better lesson with this piece of technology, rather than just being concerned about, like, how does this affect me, or how can I do this, or I don't have time to do this, and all these kinds of other concerns. The third diagnostic dimension was the innovation configuration, and innovation configuration is a picture of ideal use of a particular tool or innovation or whatever that might be. So if I used a lot of references to interactive whiteboards in my paper, because the school where I work recently has done a lot of integrating of interactive whiteboards. And so how closely, like, what would it look like for ideal use in a classroom of interactive whiteboards? So that's basically what innovation configuration would be. So what does high quality implementation look like in a classroom setting? Is basically what that is. Another thing that had a big impact on me was the change facilitator style. So in the article, Hall and Horde and George and all these other people who kind of developed this identified 3 different change facilitator styles. What I like about this is that there's only 3. They're easy to remember. So there's initiators, managers, and responders. And initiators are kind of like the go-getter types. You know, they're like, we got to get this done, and this is how we're going to do it, and get on, or let's go through it. You know, and managers tend to rely on the rules, policies, and flow charts to get their message across. They might not be the most inspirational leaders, but they get the job done. And then the last one is responders, and responders tend to focus on the emotional needs of all the teachers under their care and students, and they want everybody to get along, and you know, they want everything to be good. And what's interesting, well, I found it interesting because no one is exactly only one of those. They're not exclusive of each other. So some people have some initiator characteristics, and everybody has some of these characteristics. Figuring out where you kind of lie on here would kind of help you to, you know, analyzing your leadership style would help you to work with principals who have different leadership styles and all the teachers as well. So the concerns-based adoption model is a model, it's a conceptual model that makes sense to me. And the knowledge, as I said before, the knowledge I've gained by studying it has made me a more empathetic leader. It's allowed me to put myself in the shoes of my colleagues and examine my own learning and practice, as well as encouraging reflection on the work I do daily. So I think about the work that I do daily, and as I was saying before, that example with the dance, you know, after a lesson I'd go in and I'd think about it, well, what went well with that lesson and what didn't, and you know, I could kind of look at the stages of concern, and I could see my concerns going up, and my levels of use were getting better too. You know, I can use these DVDs in this way, and a lot of the training that I've had in these courses and in this cohort has helped me as well. So that has gone a long ways towards moving me up on the levels of use with any kind of innovation, not just technology stuff. The concerns-based adoption model, I think, is a good fit with IT leadership, because as IT leaders, we're called upon to implement and evaluate the use of innovations like interactive whiteboards, tablets, podcasting, just a whole myriad of things, and there's always new stuff coming out every day. But we're also called upon to be agents of change, and the concerns-based adoption model is all about change and how people react to change. Change and its traumatic elements are a recurring theme throughout the literature I've encountered on the concerns-based adoption model. So the traumatic elements, you know, and they talk about change causes trauma. So I chose to do an annotated bibliography to satisfy the requirements for this course, and also because I thought that was a good vehicle to...
I decided to jump through this hoop. Number 1 was to get the job done.
Yeah.
2 was...
Well, number 2 was...
It's being taped, by the way.
Because it forced me to... That's okay. It forced me to construct my own knowledge through summaries, evaluation, and personal reflection. So that's why I chose to do that annotated bibliography, and it suited my learning style, and that's why I did that. I started by searching databases for relevant articles. I pretty much right away went to all the Hall stuff, and from the 70s and 80s, and then after that I picked a couple of other articles from later on, these 2000 and 2001 ones, and of course this is the one that had the most impact on me as an IT leader. I probably wouldn't do it exactly the same way again. I would maybe pick a couple of articles from the 70s and 80s, and then after that I'd try to find more recent stuff maybe. I'm not saying that that other stuff wasn't valuable, but just because we were limited in scope, like I could have found like 50 articles and written a 200-page paper if I'd had enough time, you know, but because of those limitations. But I think maybe even if I had to do this again, I would focus maybe more on more recent stuff. But as I was working through this, you know, I have this poster of Bloom's taxonomy on my wall, and I was kind of like trying to keep that in mind as I was writing my annotations and as I was thinking about these things, you know, absorbing this and then kind of mixing it all up in my head and then churning it out into my own personalized version of it, pretty much. So as I was reading these articles and figuring out how to do an annotated bibliography, I read through some sources of what an annotated bibliography is. I read examples and things like that, and You know, it's supposed to be part of it is a summary, part of it is an evaluation, and part of it is reflection. As I was reading through it, I generated these 5 essential questions. And the questions became the guiding force for my capstone project. So these 5, I originally had 8 or 9 of them, but then I pared those down too, because I thought some of them were, oh, this question is pretty similar to this question, so I'll just cut them out and make it into one. So the first question was, how does the material in these sources apply to the district level IT leader? And the CBAM is important to and applies to the district level IT leader in various ways. The most important one, I think, is the agent of change. You know, if I'm a district level IT leader and I have to work with principals, well, it's a good idea to know what kinds of different change facilitator styles I'm going to run into. So having knowledge about what an initiator principal is, manager, and responder, you know, I can plan my strategy, how I'm going to talk to that person when I walk in their building as a district IT leader and say, well, we're putting smart boards in your school, and here's how we're going to do it. And you know, if I kind of know that person and know what kind of leader they are, then I can kind of tailor that introduction. Having a good understanding of the change, as I said, can help ease the concerns of principals who might be apathetic or mistrustful of change in technology. So not every principal is open to it. Next, how does the material in these sources apply to the school-based IT leader? So as a school-based IT leader, we're often called upon to provide professional development for the other teachers. But not only that, you often have to sell them on certain tools, or you have to help them through it, and having an understanding of the stages of concern and understanding how they're going to be or how they're going to react, and knowing what their levels of use already. You know, the people that I work with, I kind of know what their levels of use are already. I wouldn't have to go out and do all the charts and the questionnaires and stuff like that, because I've been working with those people for a long time. But having knowledge of that helps you to plan the PD and helps you to, you know, well, I know this is going to be too complicated for this person, so maybe we better just go from, you know, baby steps into that type of thing. So understanding the concerns-based adoption model as a model for change will give the school level IT leader a starting point to understanding and empathizing with colleagues working with innovations. Is that my time already? Okay, I'm almost done.
3 minutes, not fast.
Okay, so how could the ideas and material in these sources be applied to an IT leadership context? The CBAM can be used in an IT leadership context by informing and educating colleagues on its merits. So if I tell my colleagues, well, here's the concerns-based adoption model, here's why it's good, and here's why you should kind of think about this as you're implementing innovations. Applying the CBAM to educational innovations at one's worksite gives the IT leader material with which to begin the change process. And a lot of the PD tools, at first when I was thinking about this project, I thought, well, I'll make these questionnaires and do this and this and that. But that stuff's already all available. And so I wasn't going to reinvent the wheel with that, so I figured, well, what else can I do? So, but anyways, how can the material in these sources be used to enhance, encourage, or otherwise influence teachers in the adoption of technology? So an understanding of levels of use, stages of concern in IC will give teachers more control over their own learning. And control over their personal learning will encourage them to adopt and integrate educational innovations. Finally, the last question, how does the material in these sources ultimately benefit students, schools, and the greater educational system? I think that it'll be a trickle-down effect. You know, teachers adopt innovations, their teaching will improve. You know, if they can reflect on that innovation and say, well, this one's not so good, but I really like this thing, they're going to perfect that, and the students will ultimately benefit from that. In recent years, as we've seen lots of technological innovations, and as teachers become less fearful of change, CBAM can provide support they need to adopt those innovations. So the website development and rationale, a website on which to house the learning and knowledge contained within my document seemed like a logical choice, so I used this Wix, and which I had learned in this cohort. Thanks, Jesse, for introducing that.
What's the address again for that?
I'll pop it up there after. And so this is just the homepage of it. So and my intent with that is just it's going to be there for me later on, and anybody else I can convince to kind of use the concerns-based adoption model or anything like that can like go there and use it or look at it or whatever. And what's unique about this is that it's really from an IT leadership perspective, and I didn't find too much other terms, how it would relate to the concerns-based adoption model. So to conclude, the CBAM and knowledge of its dimensions will prove to be useful tools as I conclude my studies within the IT leadership cohort and move into educational leadership positions. Although I mainly analyzed it in the context of technology innovations, it's important to note that this can be applied to any innovation. As I said before, you know, the DVDs with the multicultural dances that I taught in phys ed, you know, you can apply to that. Recently we did this, I worked on a committee teaching English language arts in grade 1 and 2, so our district kind of, I teach in a French immersion school, and throughout the province most French immersion schools only introduce English language arts in grade 3, but we've been doing it in grade 1, but they've been realizing for a long time that the program of studies is too big to teach in grade 1. So we took that program of studies and whittled it down a little bit, provided tools for teachers, and my role on that project, that's what I did during my internship, and my role on that project was to kind of provide a technology vision for it and to help integrate technology with it and so on and so forth. So it can be applied to any educational innovation. And so now I would like to invite you to go to the website, and if you click on, if you go to this page, at the bottom there's a little discussion starter activity, and so if you want to, you can do the little discussion activity and then talk about it, or if anybody has any questions, then they can ask me.